Looking at who the White Sox have slated to compete for the starting shortstop job, let's discuss why you better hope Colson Montgomery is ready for the big leagues on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert at SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, Jacob Amaya is back, and that should be a clear sign the White Sox front office has no plans to bring in a veteran to compete for the starting job. Let's discuss in the first segment why it might be imperative that hotshot prospect Colson Montgomery is ready for the big leagues. Then let's discuss 5 players who should be on their final shot with the White Sox. And finally, let's discuss where some now former players have ended up recently or could end up before spring training starts. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. So it feels like Jacob Amaya really never left the White Sox, and he's back, folks, after briefly being on the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles, hey, they thought they were cute by trying to sneak him through waivers just to outright him off the roster. Instead, the Sox front office must have regretted DFAing him in the first place because they claimed him off waivers. I believe bringing back the shortstop also means this front office is not even interested in signing a veteran free agent to compete for the job. And if that's the case, you better hope Colson Montgomery is ready for the big leagues, because he's the only option of those who are going to be vying for the starting shortstop job that actually provides any major upside at shortstop. And that's a very key position to have a very good player at. Now, first, if you are confused as to why the White Sox got rid of Jacob Amaya only to bring him back, former host of the show and current host of the CHGO White Sox podcast, Sean Anderson, I think he summed it up best when he tweeted out the explanation. This is at, I got the up on the screen for those watching on YouTube, but for those listening via podcast, this is at Sean_W_Anderson. IDK, why people are confused. My draw still seems like a second B, less like a shortstop. Colson could easily start the year in AAA. Who is left to play shortstop? Seems like there is no more interesting free agent shortstops available, and they have a ton of outfield depth in Colas, Fletcher, and Jolks. And to make room on the roster, Zach DeLoach has been DFA'd. So count him out for one of the options to be the 4th or maybe 5th out. Well, probably would have been the 5th outfielder. I think Fangraphs actually projected him in their depth charts resources, but the lefty is off. So looks like it's going to be Dominic Fletcher and Oscar Colas, and probably maybe Nick Matan vying, because and even Cal Mitchell. I believe Cal Mitchell can play outfield in terms of non-roster invites. And it wouldn't shock me if they made another non-roster invite at some point. They have to put Jesse Schulten's probably on the 60-day DL. So they could make one more roster move at some point without having to DFA anybody, but they have to wait till spring training starts. But honestly, Sean Anderson, former host of the show, summed it up perfectly, because in terms of the veteran options, not great, Bob. Nick Ahmed, yeah, he's got ties to assistant GM Josh Barfield, but his hitting days are long gone. Jose Iglesias, defensive skills at shortstop have eroded. He had a great, year with the Mets last year, but it was mostly at third base. He had a lot of his impact at third base. And honestly, not sure you want a reunion with Paul DeJong. I don't think it makes any sense, given that, one of the reasons why he was brought in to replace Tim Anderson was he was supposed to be a defensive upgrade, and he was terrible defensively for the White Sox last season. And yeah, he hit home runs, but who else can hit home runs? Colson Montgomery. He's got the potential to hit dingers, and he's way younger. So why bring in Paul DeJong to be a potential bridge, or to at least be a veteran to compete, when you have his floor? I mean, that's Colson Montgomery's floor. And people are saying, like, I don't mean that to diss Colson Montgomery. I'm saying when you're looking at his floor, Paul DeJong has had a major league career. He has had double-digit home run seasons. He's obviously fluctuated in terms of his average, but he's had a major league career. And I'm sure he'll end up in somebody's spring training once we get closer to spring training. And maybe he'll end up taking a minor league, deal with an invite to camp. Who knows? But, you already have that version, so why not just roll with that version who has more club control and hope he hits his ceiling, which is still a very high ceiling. But if you look at what the White Sox are entering spring training with in terms of the position battle, you got Amaya, who hit 179 with a 419 OPS in 23 games played after being claimed off waivers late in the 2024 season. He's bounced around now. I think he's now, he's been on like 4 organizations, technically very briefly with the Orioles. But, the Sox claimed him off of waivers. He's been available for reasons. Brooks Baldwin, who did rake in the minors, but he struggled to hit in 33 big league games, 211 average with a 566 OPS. And you hope to everything that you pray to that Lenyn Sosa is not being considered for the shortstop job just because his defense is atrocious. Chase Mydroth, yes, he could be in the mix, but people know I am very high on Chase Mydroth. I put my money where my mouth is. Made that bet with Bez last week's episode. We talked about it, where I think he can get 70 walks in 125 games or more. He's the modern day Greek god of walks, in my opinion. And yes, I will continue to say that. Chase Mydroth and Rico Nishida, those are like my guys. But the scouting report projects he's going to play better defensively at second base. Nick Matan is, he's a non-roster invite. Andre Lipsius, might as well try and volunteer to play there too if you're trying to win a roster spot. Those are kind of your non-roster invites. And no, Jacob Gonzalez, the former first-round pick, I know he got an invite to camp, but he's not anywhere close to being ready to the major leagues. He still has to try to prove he can hit double-A pitching. And yes, GM Chris Getz has mentioned Josh Rojas, who they signed this offseason, and then they ironically DFA'd Jacob Amaya to make room for him. Rojas, he's on the roster. He has played short, but his glove work is better at third base. And he's also being showcased to be flipped at the deadline. So when you look at, and not that, like, he's still trying to prove that he could be an everyday player. His career season may have been past him already. So if you're looking for an upside, Colson Montgomery is the only player that brings true all-star capability to a key position. And obviously there's questions if he can fill the position. Let's establish that right away. I mean, there's scouting reports out there that still think he needs to be moved to third base. And he did have 19 errors at AAA last season. But hey, Tim Anderson was beloved on the South Side, and he was never known for his defense. What you're really on the lookout for is Colson's ability to hit home runs, get on base, and flat out, could he potentially rake? That's what you're looking for. And the concern is obviously the raking, because he did hit 18 home runs at AAA, but he hit just 214 in that bandbox park. That's why there's this risk. That's why are they rushing him? Because I believe he's still 22. So you don't want to, Gordon Beckham this, not Tim Beckham, Gordon Beckham. You don't want to Gordon Beckham him, bring him up before he's ready. But he has a little bit of more minor league at bats than I think Beckham. I mean, they definitely fast-tracked Beckham. But you can go back to multiple episodes where I've had multiple guests break down his season and go over why you actually maybe should not be concerned with that 214 average. And also, he had a very strong September and a very strong Arizona Fall League. But the fact is that Colson is the best option now, and the future shows that this is the one position group. Not only is he the best option now, but the future, because this is the one position group where Chris Getz failed to provide enough cover. I mean, because if you look at every other transaction Chris Getz has done this offseason, he's actually provided himself some cover despite saying, hey, I want to give some of these prospects or some of these younger guys a runway. You got two talented catching prospects in Kyle Teal and Edgar Carroll, 2 top 100 prospects, 2 top 10 catching prospects. He still goes out, trades for Matt Thaiss, and invites Omar Narvaez to spring training just in case they need some time in the minors to get ready for a full workload. Second base, you got Rojas and Sosa to cover just in case Chase Mydroth takes a little bit of time to adjust to the big league game. Same with third, because you got those two just in case Miguel Vargas and Brian Ramos are not ready or still need some time. Although, God, I hope Vargas has had plenty of time, people. And I know there's the Vargas bros out there. The guy's had plenty of time, so he's been given plenty of runway. But either way, say Vargas fails, you still have some cover in case Ramos needs a little bit more time in the minors, because remember he showed some potential, but he's still I think he's 22 as well, or 23. So you've given yourself some cover there. Go in the outfield. You sign Mike Tauchman and Austin Slater to cover just in case Dominic Fletcher still can't hit big league pitching. He went out and at least he got some professional options just in case. At shortstop, he goes out and brings back Jacob Amaya after cutting him. And again, I let's rewind a little bit, like 5 minutes ago, where I did say the free agent options are not great, but still, when Colson's AAA season is screaming, his 2024 AAA season is screaming, might need some more time. Heck, Brooke Baldwin's big league sample screams, might need some more time. You think Getz would probably want to make some backup plan moves, and you think he would do better than Jacob Amaya. And this is where, again, you start to still have that trepidation with Chris Getz. He shows you a little bit, and I know this is small potatoes, considering, he's had I think he's had a very prudent offseason. And I think he did a very good job in the Garrett Crochet trade, even though, again, I would loved for them to extend Garrett Crochet. I understand why he needed to be traded. And I do think, Luis Robert Jr., if you could get 2 top 5 prospects, fine, trade them before opening day. Even though you're not, roll the dice. But again, these prudent backup plan moves, especially since these backup plan moves are not going to block any of these younger players long term. Matt Thaiss is not going to block Kyle Teel and Edgar Carroll. Austin Slater and Mike Tauchman hopefully are off the roster by the trade deadline. Same with Josh Rojas. But again, why I have to say this is small potatoes to critique on Getz is the free agent market really did not provide any great cover options, obviously. And I'm not bashing Brooks Baldwin here. So the Baldwin brothers, the Baldwin bros, I'm not saying he can't be a viable even cover or a bridge in his own right for Colson Montgomery if he has to go to AAA to start the year. But it's just when he got up here, he had a lot more bad at bats than he had good at bats. A lot of them. And I just get the vibes his ceiling is super utility guy. And plus, the whole point of why I'm discussing this is, again, at the end of the 2025 season, and I know it's going to be a terrible season, but I want the arrow at least pointing up. And Colson Montgomery is the only one of these options that they're going to look at shortstop that at least has the offensive talent to help accomplish that goal. Well, I think I've made it clear that Luis Robert Jr. and Andrew Vaughn should be on their last run with the White Sox. Let's discuss 3 more players who should join them in terms of it being their last shot to stick with the Sox. And let's discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So as everydayers have probably heard me say, I'm convinced Luis Robert Jr. is not going to be on the White Sox after the 2025 trade deadline. And again, he might not even make it to the opening day roster because the front office probably doesn't trust him to stay healthy, and they're going to try to trade him for whatever package they can get. And I've had plenty of past shows dedicated to that topic. I've also had past shows, talking about how this should be Andrew Vaughn's last shot with the White Sox to finally reach his potential. But let's add 3 more names who should be on their last shot with the White Sox this season, or even in spring training. Lenyn Sosa, he's out of options. So he can no longer rack up frequent flyer miles between Chicago and Charlotte like he did in 2024 without being DFA'd. And this has to be it for him. He can't keep bouncing back and forth between one day or maybe 1 month looking like a solid baseball player and the next day or month looking like he's nothing more than a 4A player. Because how many times did he get demoted? He got demoted twice before having that strong September. And every time he went to Charlotte, he raked. Then they bring him back up. He'd have a game or two where he would look really promising, and then he would go 0 for 14 and have 3 errors. And he did finish the 2024 season strong with a 388, 405, 588 slash line and 4 home runs over the final 28 days of the season. But remember, he was demoted to AAA last season twice, as I just said, and he had a 174, 193, 186 slash line during the month of August. I mean, he's all over the place. Now, maybe his red hot September was the sign of him actually figuring things out, or it could have just been a hot month. Remember, Gavin Sheets had a really great April, and he's still looking for work, which I'll address in the next segment. Corey Lee got off to a hot start, and then he's turned out to be nothing more than he's going to be a very cheap backup catcher. And Sosa was once a highly regarded White Sox prospect, but he's just never been able to establish consistent play at the big league level. And outside of that, hot streak in September, it's been mostly bad. So all that did was it just earned him a shot to compete for the starting second base or third base job, depending on what the White Sox want to do with him in the infield. But he's a terrible defender, and this has to be it for him. If he cannot show that he proves that he can be a good big league player, or at least a solid big league player, you got to move on. Oscar Colas, again, how is he still on the 40-man roster is still a mystery to me. I'm a little surprised that they DFA'd Zach DeLoach. Now, Oscar Colas has gotten better in the on-base percentage game, so it almost was interchangeable. But Zach DeLoach hit left-handed and was a little bit bigger than Dominic Fletcher and had a better on-base percentage than Dominic Fletcher. Not saying that they would have DFA'd him, but again, Getz did not give a ringing endorsement during the winter meetings to either Colas or Fletcher. But I'm just surprised that Oscar Colas is still on the 40-man roster. Grant, look at how his careers has declined. He went from being the next iteration of being the long-term solution in right field, played completely undisciplined in 2023. That got him in the doghouse because he was reckless out there in terms of his fielding. He was always overthrowing the cutoff man, just free swinging at everything. Gets demoted. Then he only plays 13 big league games last season, doesn't even get a September call-up, and yet here he is. He's still on the 40-man roster, and it's not like he's this young hotshot prospect. He's 26, and he, I don't think I think FanGraphs has it. He has one minor league option left, so that maybe gives him a sense to stick around. But a lot of the advocates for him, as James Fox tweeted out a couple weeks back, they're gone. So I don't know. It's still baffling to me. I mean, he with his athleticism, with his ability to show that he can get on base. I know they wanted him to hit for more power, but it's surprising me that he's still around, given that you've signed Austin Slater and Mike Tauchman, and you did bring back Corey Julks. You outrighted him off the roster, so you got some organizational depth. I'm just stunned that he's still on this team. Actually, free Oscar, and obviously Miguel Vargas. The crown jewel in that ill-fated 3-team deal that Getz made at last year's trade deadline, again, where he sent Eric Fetty and outfielder Tommy Pham to St. Louis and pitcher Michael Kopech to the Los Angeles Dodgers, and got Vargas and then 2 scratch-off prospects, one of whom had a broken leg. But you think about it, Vargas was terrible once he came to the White Sox. I'm sorry, Vargas bros, and I always kid. Anytime I talk about Miguel Vargas, somebody's going to get into the YouTube community and mention, well, he was great in the Dodgers minor leagues, and he was once a top 100 prospect. Yes, I get it, but he has been given like 300, 400, 500 at bats, and he can't hit heat. And if you're going to tell me minor league heat, well, he hit fastballs in the minor leagues, a lot different than the majors, because in the majors they're throwing their fastballs to spots, or they're throwing their fastballs to get swing and misses, or they're just throwing it way harder than what the guy at single A is going to throw. They can actually command their pitches, but he can't hit velocity, and he obviously clearly struggled to going from the best team in baseball to the worst team in baseball. I mean, how many times do they take shots of him just looking absolutely shell-shocked? Like, I don't think he got over the just being traded. I think he actually could not comprehend that he was traded. I want to be like, dude, you're Miguel Vargas. Yes, you were once a hotshot prospect, but now you are what you are, and that means you got to get better in a hurry. You can't hit 104, 217, 170 like you did for the White Sox, man. Still 25, obviously, and a headliner in a major trade. So he's going to be given another shot to live up to his immense potential. But honestly, I think you only give him this year. You can't think this is like Avi Garcia and just keep hoping and hoping and hoping, or Andrew Vaughn. I mean, because you have other options and you have draft picks. There are other draft picks. You could draft another player at some point to be that third baseman of the future. And again, you have options, and you did sign veteran Josh Rojas. So if there is an issue where he can't hit, you can slide him over. You have Ramos, still considered a top 30 prospect. So you have those guys, you have options. So Vargas has to figure out how to hit velocity, or otherwise he's never going to reach his immense potential. And he's also out of options as well. Well, speaking of being out of options, let's discuss where some now former White Sox players have ended up or will end up, and let's discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Shout out to all the everydayers. I really appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. So in a way, the White Sox and Cubs, they sort of did a trade of players with ties to the area. Albeit came via free agency, but kind of the same. I mean, the Sox signed the Palatine Pounder, Mike Tauchman. They signed him earlier in the offseason. And the Cubs, they just signed Naperville Nicky Lopez signs with the Cubs on a one-year deal. And honestly, good for both teams, getting former local products that are now switching sides. Nicky Lopez was a Gold Glove candidate, but his production shows he's now a utility player. And Craig Counsell loves utility players. Give him all the utility players in the world. He loves working with them. And the Sox obviously needed a player who gets on base way more than Nicky Lopez. And they obviously needed a professional outfielder. And they get that in Tauchman. So good for both. It's a one swap out for another. But in terms of other former players, I want to just run it down. Yoan Moncada, rumors are starting to swirl that he could be, be going to the New York Yankees. They could still be interested. I've been seeing the reports, especially with Jazz Chisholm is going to go to second base. The Brewers are also being floated since they still have a big question mark at third base. I wonder if he is still out on the market because he actually wants a big league deal, and maybe teams are hoping he's going to take a minor league deal with an invite to camp. I think they want to be like, look, your buddy Eloy just did that with the Rays. You're constantly hurt. I don't want to commit, the $5 million. And even if you look at like Tim Anderson, the Marlins tried, they gave him a big league contract and it blew up in their face. So I wonder if that's just the reason why he's still out there is, because he wants a big league deal, because he is a low risk, high reward player. You're just not going to pay him $25 million. That's why the White Sox paid $5 million to make him go away. But if he stays healthy, he's got the talent to still be a very good baseball player. It's just, again, staying healthy. Can he be on the baseball field? Former Sox starting pitcher Lance Lynn is now being floated as a closer. Yes, he is 37, but the Athletics' Ken Rosenthal reported that Lynn told him teams are interested in being a closer. I mean, he was a reliever to start his career. Certainly has the confidence and cockiness to thrive in that role. Did post a 3.84 ERA last season as a starter for the Cardinals. One thing I did overlook last month is there's still a team that thinks Martin Maldonado might have something to offer, and I'm stunned. I am stunned. Like, he looked definitely cooked. He was hitting under 100 for most of the season for the White Sox last year at catcher. But he did sign a minor league deal with the Padres. However, my gut tells me it was just more signing to help catch during spring training warmups and bullpen sessions. They usually need a lot of catchers, and they do those minor league invites and that type of stuff. If you Google Gavin Sheets, you're not going to get any hits on any interest in him. None. Everything Gavin Sheets, free agent target, anything. I haven't seen anything on MLB trade rumors either. And I'm surprised he hasn't gotten even an offer to go to Korea or Japan to hope he rebuilds his career there, because he's still 28 and hits left-handed. And those are usually like, even Japan and Korea would be jumping on a guy that can, still at least has theoretically power, because it's always been theoretical with Gavin Sheets, because all he's never hit is, 15 home runs. He's never hit the 20 or 30 home runs that really is in that, kind of that potential that you thought he had. But I'm just surprised that, he hasn't gone overseas. Maybe he's gotten offers and he's still holding out hope, but there's nothing. There's no traction right now that I can see. Nick Madrigal signed a minor league deal with the New York Mets. The Sox former 2018 first-round pick got let go by the Cubs, and now he's hoping to catch on with the Mets. As I said on a few shows back, every day has probably heard that, looking back at the 2018 draft class, you know what? It's kind of hard for me to get mad at the Sox anymore for taking him, despite, again, having that low ceiling. He's a high floor, low ceiling guy, because honestly, that first-round class has not produced much. It's Nico Horner, and that's it, if I recall. Anyways, Kevin Pillar still wants to play in 2025, but nothing in terms of teams being interested when you do the old Google search. One moment. Sorry there, I had to hit the cough button. Jose Quintana, who I'd still love a reunion with, is still on the market. The Sox former left-handed pocket ace that came along with Chris Sale during last decade and then eventually got traded to the Cubs. A lot of reports are saying could make sense for the Cleveland Guardians. Also seen him linked to the Braves. JustBaseball.com also lists the Blue Jays, the Padres, and the Tigers as logical landing spots. Chris Flexen has actually been tied to the Miami Marlins. I believe their MLB.com beat reporter suggested that. Makes sense for them since they have not spent any money at all this offseason. They have not literally spent a dime yet. And he would come in as a cheap innings eater, for a starting rotation, because eating innings is about all he does well. David Robertson, still a hot commodity on the bullpen free agent market. 40 years old, can still get some outs. The Cubs seem interested in having a reunion with him as he pitched for both the Northsiders and the Southsiders. Tommy Conley signed with the Tigers last week. Kendall Graveman missed all of 2024 with a shoulder injury. He's actually drawing some interest, according to ESPN's Jesse Rogers. Didn't list any teams really being interested, like specific teams, but he did tweet teams are interested in the Sox former reliever. John Brebbia, Tim Hill, Kenyon Middleton, Chad Kuhl, Jake Diekman, Brent Honeywell, and Joe Kelly. Well, they're still out there looking for someone to ask them for to help them out in their bullpen. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss the Sox Pagoda projections and whether you and I should really care or not. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding hoping Colson Montgomery is ready to be the everyday shortstop, because the other options, not so great, Bob. 5 players who should be on their last shot with the White Sox, and former White Sox players who have ended up and former White Sox players where they've recently ended up or could end up before spring training starts. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.